Hey, what's up, everybody? I just wanted to make a video to address some of the typically asked questions about Flat Earth because most people don't want to sit there and read through long, drawn-out, worded explanations. Everybody wants to just listen. So here we go. First, we got Flat Earth Society. Flat Earth Society says this, Flat Earth Society says that, this is stupid, whatever, whatever. Flat Earth Society is CIA. They are anti-propaganda. They are literally putting things out to sound stupid on purpose. They don't want you to believe flat Earth. That's why they say things like the Earth is accelerating upwards at 9.8 meters per second squared. It's just dumb. So just avoid Flat Earth Society, avoid any of that bullshit. Next we got the Edge. What is the Edge? It's Antarctica. Well, I've been to Antarctica. Well, that's fine. It's still the Edge. What you do is you take a globe and you poke a hole in Antarctica in about the center. Then you spread it out, flatten the North Pole down to get the center of the plane, which is the Arctic Circle. You end up with Antarctica, the coastline of the circle, if you will. This coastline holds in the ocean, so there will be no falling off. The only way you're going to get to Antarctica is if you go south. Nobody's going south below South America and Australia. Nobody's going close to Antarctica, and nobody's visiting there besides tourists who are under government surveillance. You cannot go and explore it freely. You cannot go and own any of it. The Antarctic Treaty prevents any of that. You cannot do it. You will be arrested if you try. Many have. Next is stars. I see a different star over here in North America than you do over there in Africa. That's just fine. That's how perspective works. You have your sky, you have your ground, and you have what's known as your vanishing point. The vanishing point is a place in the distance where your sky and your ground are going to merge together and form the horizon. The horizon is nothing to do with the Earth curving out of the way. It's just a matter of perspective and vanishing points. Anyone who has studied perspective can easily attest to this. Oh, you've seen pictures of Earth from space. That's fine because you know what? Lenses distort things. If you've ever seen curvature of the Earth with a rectilinear lens, I'd love to see it. Because every time somebody suggests that they've got a picture, it's got a GoPro lens or they have barrel distortion going on. Now the difference here is going to be GoPro lenses are going to form a very distinct curve based on how high or low you are from the center frame. They maintain it because generally the cameras are fixed. Now, most of the time these videos will start at the ground level and you can see for yourself it's already curved. It's the cameras curving those lenses. The other side of this coin is a less subtle or a more subtle curve than the GoPro curve. It's going to be just a little tiny bit of curvature, and this is what's called barrel distortion. See, if you have a camera angle that cannot capture the entire field of view, say it's set up to capture 300 miles and you've got a 500-mile horizon, what's going to happen is the edges are going to warp up or down based on being farther or closer to center frame. It's a very subtle curve, so some people will sit there and say, well, no, it's not GoPro, so the Earth's still round. No, it's just barrel distortion, and it's done on purpose. Again, you can look up plenty of videos well above the required height to see curvature, and the horizons will still be flat using rectilinear lenses with proper field of view. It's just how it works. I mean, you can go see it at 100,000, 110,000. You can even see SpaceX launch something all the way up to 220 something kilometers and the horizon's still flat. I mean, the horizon does not lower relative to your position like it should on a sphere, and it's just flat. There's no curve to a spherical horizon, so it's definitely a flat horizon. I mean, there's no arguing there. But I'm rambling. China and Russia are lying too. Yes, unfortunately so. All the people propagating this lie serve the same cause. This cause goes above government. This cause goes above politics, media, all of it. It's one driving shadow government over the world, if you will. That's why nothing ever seems to get done. That's why no matter how much goes down, nothing seems to change. It's because the whole system is designed to lie to you. So unfortunately, yes, the Russian and Chinese videos, the Japanese videos, they can all be debunked on their own. It's just a matter of the government in general is lying to humanity in general. You don't have to cite NASA, you don't have to cite anything. You can just look into it yourself. Next is Eratosthenes proved that the Earth was a globe because, you know, he did his experiment where he went from wherever it was in Egypt to the other place, like so however many miles south of it, and he proved that the Earth is supposed to do 360-degree rotations based on some numbers. What he assumed and what caused this to be a misunderstanding is the distance of the sun to be 93 million miles or however many absurd amount of miles out in the sky the sun is supposed to be, and very large. If you assume these things, his experiment proves exactly what he suggests, that the Earth spins 360 degrees in a day. What he did not think of or ignored on purpose based on agendas is that a local sun, just a few thousand miles above the Earth and being tiny, would form the exact same shadows. These shadows would change based on where it was doing a circle around the plane. This experiment is a good experiment as it proves that the Earth is 360 degrees, but it's proving the motion of the sun moves in 360-degree paths, not the motion of the Earth spinning in 360-degree paths. Next is, I've seen boats set over the horizon. I've seen the sun set over the horizon. This is, again, perspective. If you use one of those nice new cameras, the Nikon P900X, they're coming out with a better one soon. It's got about 83 times optical zoom. That's almost as good as a telescope, which is around 100. If you watch the sun set and then you see it halfway set, and you zoom in with a good Nikon camera or anything with similar zoom, you will find that the sun can be restored above the horizon. The gap between it can be restored, the full height can be restored. You can do this over and over and over until the sun backs away and the atmosphere itself starts to fade the light out. So there's no suns going over horizons, there's no boats going over horizons. Everything can be brought back with zoom until the atmosphere itself is too thick to start seeing it, and it'll just blur itself out of existence, basically. A lot of people don't understand the mirages, how superior and inferior mirages work. You got to study all that stuff when you're looking at these boats, and I promise you they will never go over a curve. You can bring them back every time and watch them disappear into the atmosphere. Why do things fall down? If gravity doesn't work on a disk, how can things fall down? I don't even get why this question is so difficult for everybody. I am more dense than air. If I jump in the air, I'm going to be pulled back through the air because I am more dense than it. Air is not strong enough to support me, so I'm going to fall through it based on my density. I'm not, however, going to fall through the floor because it is more dense than I am. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you fall through and not fall through based on gravity? Why would it stop at the floor? It's a constant force. It should be constantly driving you. But the only thing there is density. You are more dense. If you were made of helium, you would float up into the air. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And a little bit of that to do is magnetic fields, right? So your heart and your brain, both electromagnetic generators. You've got electrons in your body. Every single atom's got them. Unless it's a perfect neutral version of the atom, it's going to be an ion. Ions are going to be charged one way or the other. And electron fields can be aligned. It's how magnetism works. Is a magnetic field is aligned in a direction. We live on the Earth, which is always got a magnetic torus going from the center into the ground at every latitude. So if we've constantly got a magnetic field going from up to down, and we are magnetic fields ourselves, we become aligned to that magnetic field and thus have a preference for down. That's why you don't fall sideways, and that's why density is pretty much the only thing that you have to account for. Density and a little bit of static, but that's it. We're just more dense than air, I'm afraid. Arctic and Antarctic midnight sun. This is just a misconception and misunderstanding of the model. The midnight sun in the Arctic is perfectly possible because what happens with the sun is when it does its 360-degree paths around the Earth, this path slowly gets wider and wider. You can see this by looking at the lunar or solar anemonas. What they do is form a figure-8 pattern, and this pattern slowly gets bigger and bigger as you go towards the south. This is because as you go south on a disk, you get closer to the edge, and thus the circles are bigger and bigger. The heliocentric advocates will tell you this is because the Earth is on some kind of tilt or elliptical orbit, or however they try to argue it, but really it's just because the sun's doing 360-degree paths in the same amount of time, but over a greater path. So it just makes a bigger and bigger pattern further south. But what you get is when it's close enough to the center of the plane, you can see it for 24 hours a day. It's because it's not far enough to ever lose itself based on your perspective. What you would see from Antarctica is a sun that comes near you, and then you watch it for most of your day, and then you watch it set again as it leaves in the distance, because you've got to imagine you're on the rim of the disk and you watch the sun come and go. What they don't tell you is that the Scott-based video is entirely false. You can look up videos of people who have actually gone to Antarctica to work there and recorded the midnight sun. And it doesn't do anything like the Scott-based video, which shows a high sun in the sky, doing nice, perfect 360-degree circles. It's completely fabricated just to make the lie go. So watch a real sun, watch a fake sun, whatever you want to do. Proof's out there if you want. How does it become night? I kind of touched on this a little bit with how do I perspective the sun, whatever. The sun is going to set based on perspective. You keep watching it with a nice camera, and eventually the light can no longer penetrate the atmosphere because it's just that far away. When the light no longer penetrates, it becomes dark. You watch the sun go, and the night comes with that. The time zones work the same way. The sun just brings morning on its way, and it leaves night behind it with the moon. I mean, it's not complicated. How do seasons work? This is largely to do with where the sun is. During one part of the year, the sun is close to the north, and it's over top of one hemisphere. The other half of the year, it's moved south of the equator and is moving over the other hemisphere. This is going to cause temperature changes, and these temperature changes are going to have to do with what hemisphere you're in. How deep, how thick is the flat Earth? Who could say? It's only speculated on the globe model how deep it is. Nobody's ever been deeper than the Russians. They drilled about 12 and a half kilometers into the Earth. It's like 8 miles deep. Nobody has done anything but speculate what is below the crust. They can't prove their mantles there. They can't prove their cores there. They can't prove any of that. It's just all speculation based on observation. You can't prove it. What we can prove is that when you try to dig into Earth, you can't get very far. Something stops you, and it's not going to be found out probably. Eclipses, new moons, full moons. This one's kind of tricky, and most people don't like the answer to it. But there's the sun, the moon, and then there is an invisible sun that sits 180 degrees from the regular sun, known in the Vedic text as Rahu, the invisible sun. What's going to happen is the moon slowly moves a little bit slower than the sun and the invisible sun, which always maintain this 180-degree split. When the moon is moving, the height changes. The firmament is curved. The sun and the moon have their own circuits. Sometimes it ends up above the sun. Sometimes it ends up below the sun. Every 15 days, you get one of 4 occurrences. You get the new moon when the moon is in the daytime and moves behind the sun. You never see it because it's above the sun. It goes behind the sun. You never see it because it's eclipsed, but they'll tell you that it's just a solar eclipse that missed the Earth, basically. Why nobody in either hemisphere can see a new moon when it's supposed to be out there somewhere, I don't know, beats me. But Then 15 days later, you have a back and forth between the sun and the invisible sun. The invisible sun is causing your full moons. That's why a full moon looks so beautiful, is because you're seeing the moon through a sun, basically. And when it's over top, or I'm sorry, when the invisible sun goes in front of the moon turns red, and they call it an eclipse. It's not a shadow. A shadow would blacken the moon. The moon turns red because you're looking at it through a hot filter. You can actually watch a video of a lunar eclipse through thermal or infrared and verify this yourself. You can see a disk approach the moon right before the eclipse happened. You can see the moon putting off cold thermal energy before and hot thermal energy during the eclipse. It's just a sun filter. When this filter is over top of the moon instead of underneath the moon, you get the very bright, beautiful full moon. So you have solar eclipses and new moons on one side, and you have lunar eclipses and full moons on the other side based on which sun the moon is approaching and whether or not it's above it or below it, basically. It's complicated stuff. I know you don't want to believe in an invisible sun, but it's unfortunately been verified, and the lunar eclipses never line up anyway to be the Earth's shadow. It's been recorded dozens of times where the shadow is not going to align. I mean, you've got the sun above the horizon, you've got the moon above the horizon, and then the moon becomes eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. That just doesn't work. They have to be lined up, but oftentimes they are not. How have I flown from Sydney to Chile, and how does this flight happen on a flat Earth? This is just a misconception. The plane routes on a computer tell you one thing, the compass when you go on board will tell you another thing. You fly this route, and what it's actually going to do is cut as far north as it can and use the fact that nobody knows the Earth is not symmetrical to take a shortcut. This shortcut accounts for the mileage loss, and nobody on the flight's ever going to know the difference because you just see ocean to both sides anyway. Okay, so what holds up the sun and moon if gravity aren't real, right? Gravity is completely theoretical. We observe falling down and everybody goes, well, gravity exists. No, falling exists. The sun and the moon can only be speculated to be held up by gravity. What is not speculation is electromagnetic levitation. It has been proven in labs many times. It can be replicated, it can be observed, it can be tested, it can be measured. It's scientific, unlike gravity, which is just theorized, and every time it fails, it has another theory thrown at it. I mean, gravity is backed by theory of relativity, theory of dark matter. It just falls apart every time somebody tries to use it, and it has to be reevaluated, have things added to, changed. It's a bad theory, and it can be all of the natural things you observe can be explained without it. You know, you get a magnetic field that repels the sun and the moon, and they're up there floating at whatever height they float at, and they're constantly trying to pull towards the North Pole whilst maintaining their positions in a torus field. So the torus is trying to keep them from actually reaching the center, and they're just oscillating back and forth, causing seasons. Why can't I see forever? This is the same reason the sun sets, is light doesn't go forever. Atmosphere blocks things out. You can look at any foggy day and see that you cannot see forever. You can't even see all the way to the end of the road sometimes. If there's enough moisture in the air, you're not going to see. Eventually, it's just not going to happen. Light only goes so far. This can be demonstrated, again, scientifically. You can observe it, you can repeat it, you can test this. Light does not have unlimited capability. Time zones, I already explained that. Satellites. How does this work? Because satellites don't exist. Satellites can exist. I'm very sorry to tell you, but there's no argument there. Satellites are made of titanium, carbon, and aluminum fibers. All of these things have melting points around 1,000 degrees. The thermosphere where satellites exist, however, rarely gets lower than 1,000 degrees. It's usually up at 2,000 or 3,500 degrees. If these satellites did exist, they would melt. So while some people do know other people who have quote unquote built them, worked on them, whatever, they've even launched a few into the sky, they're not going to the thermosphere. They can't go to the thermosphere, they would melt. It's just a scientific fact. What are meteors and comets? Well, for starters, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen one actually land near me. I've never heard of one landing anywhere near anybody, and every time it happens, there's no meteor. How can you have all these impacts, all these craters, with no meteor? Oh, they'll tell you it burned up. Clearly not. It hit the ground. It made a fucking crater. Where'd the meteor go? It's just discharges from the firmament. It's another form of energy discharge similar to lightning. Lightning is the Earth charging up into the firmament. Comets and meteors are the firmament discharging energy back out. It's just a constant system of equilibrium. So, yeah. You've seen the ISS. With your eyes, I really doubt it. It's 200 and something miles up in the air. You're not going to see something 200 something miles away when it's just as tiny as it is. It's physically not possible. You can't see a 747 jet, which is bigger and much lower in the sky. I mean, it's just not a thing you're going to do. Circumnavigation. This is largely just a confusion based on propaganda we all saw when we were young. East to west circumnavigation is very simple. It's like a record needle going around a record. As long as you're not going south, you're never going to get to the edge, and you can circumnavigate the plane over and over again. You could even go straight north and come back out the North Pole, but what you cannot do is go through the South Pole, come out the other side, and verify that it's a globe. You can't do it. Circumnavigation only disproves it by doing it, and you can go east to west all day. I mean, that's fine. You've seen rockets launch. Well, that's unfortunately not proof that rockets are leaving the atmosphere. What you can verify is that the rockets will always do a parabola. NASA will tell you this is because the rocket has to do a full circle around the Earth to gain momentum before it leaves the atmosphere. Realistically, it's because they're not leaving the atmosphere. They're just going up, coming down somewhere else. This is why NASA usually will launch from Florida, because the Bermuda Triangle is right there, and it's nice and easy to just launch your things right on over there into the ocean, fool everybody, and make a spectacle of yourself. There's nothing going into space, nothing at all. Why is the moon inverted when I look at it from the southern hemisphere versus the northern hemisphere? I don't really understand why this question is complicated. If you put a playing card on your ceiling right in the center, and you stand at one wall and you look at it, say it's a, whatever symbol it is, and then you walk to the other side of it on, the wall, not adjacent, but across from you, and look at the playing card, what's it going to do? You're going to see it inverted now. Has it moved? No. Have you moved? Yes. This is again to do with the moon not being as far away as we assume. The moon is right above your head, and it sets due to perspective just like the sun does. It's just supposed to invert when you look at it from the other side. It's how things work. If you look at anything from another angle, it's going to look like it's at another angle. This is very simple stuff. Coriolis effect, right? Okay, this effect does not, it's a thing that people think happens, but it doesn't. The only thing that you can even say about Coriolis is hurricanes. Hurricanes have a preference based on being north of the equator, south of the equator, but to allege that to rotation of Earth is just lazy and biased. There is no proof Earth spinning is causing this, and the preference can easily be demonstrated when you look at a map of the flat map with already present hot and cold air streams on it. Above the equator, there is one temperature. Below the equator, there is another temperature. The temperatures just, hot rises, cold lowers, and fronts from whatever storm system they come from enter these systems, and based on whether it's cold or hot, it will spin clockwise or counterclockwise. This is just a preference based on air temperatures and already present currents on the map. It has nothing to do with spin of Earth at all. So next we got a Foucault pendulum proves that the Earth is in motion. Well, I would believe that if they didn't have to be push started. That doesn't make any sense at all, that something that you have to take and physically put energy into is spinning because of the Earth. If the Earth spinning caused a Foucault pendulum to move, you couldn't stop it. Well, you could stop it, but you'd have to hold it constantly, and if you let go, it would start going again. The fact that they can ever be at rest at all disproves the fact that it's supposed to do anything for the Earth's motion. The argument is we're in the inertial field. Are we in the inertial field or are we not in the inertial field of the Earth's movement? It's not real. The Earth is not moving. The inertial field does not actually exist. It's just a big stupid lie. My magnetic compass points to the north. I'm gonna break this one down for you pretty easy. The core is supposed to be made of nickel and iron. Nickel and iron both have Curie temperatures of about 1,000 degrees, meaning that they lose their magnetic properties around 1,000 degrees. The core is alleged to be about 11,000 degrees, which means these things are way too hot to have magnetic fields. And yet, scientists will tell you that this 11,000 degree core is causing the Earth's magnetic field. This is largely false and just not scientific at all. It can't be, it isn't, and it's just a lie that they can't let go of because they know there's a magnetic field here. You can't have a magnetic field and not have a cause, and scientists don't go back on things, they just theorize more things. So what we do know is that there are dozens of old Latin maps showing a giant mountain made of magnetite in the center of the plane. There are heavy, heavy restrictions on flying through the Arctic, and nobody gets closer than the Arctic Circle so that their compass can spin in a circle and everybody can go home and say, hey, my compass spun in a circle, I flew over the North Pole. You didn't fly over the North Pole, you flew really close to the Arctic Circle and your compass started spinning. Nobody's going over this continent in the center of the plane, nobody's getting near this mountain of magnetite, and the thing is alleged to be about 33 miles in circumference. This is based on very, very old Latin, and you got to keep in mind when it says 33 miles, the biggest known mountain today is Everest with a circumference of about 6 miles. This mountain is 5.5 times larger and made of magnetic stone. This could very easily explain why a compass points north and why there is a giant magnetic field exuding from the center of the plane. Can we go there and check? No, you'll get turned around by the government because they don't let anybody look at anything. Should we go and check? Yes. Unfortunately, that requires supplies, time, people, organizations, and the government don't like none of that stuff, so it gets shut down every time somebody tries. Normally they get arrested before they ever get close. Volcanoes don't actually prove anything. You can go look at NASA's own website and look up the reasons for a volcano and whatnot. It has nothing to do with the core of Earth being full of magma. It has nothing to do with deep underground reservoirs of magma or lava or any of that stuff. It's just how subduction works. Cold is more dense than hot. You have oceanic tectonic plates and you have continental tectonic plates. These oceanic tectonic plates are being cooled by the water of the ocean. This cooling causes them to naturally try to subduct into the warmer continental plates. When they subduct into them, this creates massive, massive pressure. Pressure translates into heat, and this heat and pressure eventually has to leave the ground. This causes volcanic chains. This is why you have continental plates combining to form volcanic ridges. It's why they eventually blow up due to earthquakes. It has nothing to do with gravity. It has nothing to do with a core of lava. It's just density and subduction of oceanic and continental plates. It makes perfect sense. I don't even know why that question is supposed to have anything to do with flat Earth or round Earth, besides a misunderstanding that the core is somehow causing them. Tides. How could tides work? For the same reasons, you have the moon and the sun moving in circles above the plane. The moon and sun have magnetic fields, and these magnetic fields have been measured. They can be observed, tested, whatever. As they move around, you have to keep in mind water is naturally diamagnetic. This means that water will be repelled by a magnetic field. So if you've got two giant magnetic fields moving about on top of a plane full of diamagnetic water, it only makes sense that this water would move accordingly with these luminaries, and why you would end up with tides that vary based on their positions. Why you need to make up some sort of tidal bulge sticking out into the sky towards the moon's gravity when it's never been observed, I don't know. It's a fish story. If anyone has a picture of this tidal bulge, I'd love to see it. I don't think it exists, and the phenomena can be explained without pretending it does. There's gravity in my equation, so how can gravity not work? Okay, this is a huge misunderstanding, right? Things fall. Things fall at a speed. This speed can be measured. This speed has been measured and is put in equations. They tell you that this equation is using gravity as a variable. It is not gravity, it is the gravitational constant, which is the speed things fall down. Things falling down doesn't prove that the mass of Earth and theory of gravity is causing it. Things falling down proves that things fall down and that they fall at a speed, because everything has a speed. Why would it not have a speed? So gravity can be in your equations all day. As long as it's not actually gravity, it doesn't really matter. You're going to have a constant and it's going to be used in an equation. You can call the gravitational constant the force. You can call the gravitational constant the power of the spaghetti monster. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't actually have anything to do with gravity unless you pretend it does. So, seismic P waves. Okay, so what you've got is seismographers can actually measure an earthquake across the planet. They'll tell you this is because, the earthquakes go down through the center of the Earth and then they go all the way through, and then they can be read 180 degrees from you, and that this proves the Earth is a sphere. This is not true in the slightest. Any seismic readings would transfer, energy transfers. This energy would be transferred along the magnetic torus field, which unfortunately goes from one side of the plane to the other. I mean, a magnetic torus field is going to flow everywhere, so it's perfectly reasonable to be able to measure a seismic wave from the other side of the plane, as the torus field is just going to measure the underground energy. The torus field goes down, it goes around, and it goes back up towards the rest of the plane. So to think that this energy can't be measured somewhere besides where it originated when torus fields have a path and this path goes to other parts of the Earth, it's just silly. Can you prove the firmament exists? I can't. No, I haven't actually gone up and touched the thing. What you can do is look at the 1956 encyclopedia, which is probably just a little too old for NASA to start lying about, and you can see for yourself. It says in Antarctica there was a dome about 80 degrees south, 90 degrees west, something like that, and it was about 11,000 feet high. It's like 2.5 miles. It said it was a dome, a featureless dome, and it was covered in ice. There's the natural phenomenon of sun dogs and moon dogs. You can look at it in the sky and it will produce a sort of halo around it. This effect can be produced and reproduced by putting a light inside of a small bowl or a dome. The fact that you can reproduce Earth phenomena with a dome and a light source is a huge coincidence if it's not because of a firmament. It's an invisible dome miles in the sky. There's no way to really verify something that high up, and we can only use natural phenomena and what we've observed in the Earth. I mean, it's biblical. It makes sense with natural phenomena, and it's the way it is, unfortunately, for people who don't want to accept that the firmament's there. It's covering the planet. All the ancient religions knew it. All the people who are studying know it now. It's been documented. It's shown by natural phenomena. It's there, unfortunately. And then the last part is obviously why the lie. It's just the next step to the evolution, the dinosaur, the Big Bang. It's just another step in the hide God from everybody chain of events. They don't want anyone to know that God's real. They want everyone to think that we're this little blue marble flying through the universe and that we don't mean a thing. There is no creator. I'm here to tell you the Earth is the center of existence. Everything revolves around us, and we were made for a reason. There is a God above you. This God is the reason for it all, and his devil is the reason for the lie. If you disagree with that, I'm sorry. That's just why the lie happened. If you disagree with any of these points, I'm sorry. You can ask me for elaboration, whatever you need to do. If you need any more information, just search on Facebook, Flat Earth, no egos, good vibes. Message me. I'd be happy to answer your questions, whatever you need. Yahuwah bless. Everybody have a good day. And sorry I rant and sound so monotonous.